Welcome back to All Things MCC, where today we're going to be going through every MCC 23 team's best shot at that sweet, sweet winner's coin.
Let's start off with the Red Rabbit stand with Tommy in it, Crank Gameplays, Shovel, and our very own Seapeekay. Since Tommy and Seapeekay are the main powerhouses of this team, Red excels in their strengths, and as such, this team's best games are Hole in the Wall, Sky Battle, and Parkour Tag.
However, their best game, Hole in the Wall, won't actually be played this event, and that could trip this team up a bit, with their next best game being the widely unpredictable survival games.
On the other hand, however, the team's least favorite games are Rocket Spleef Rush, Meltdown, and interestingly, Ace Race.
Although two of these games have incredible performances, with CPK excelling in Ace Race and Tommy excelling at Meltdown, they're balanced out by Ethan's Ace Race not being the best, and CPK dying very early in Meltdown last event.
However, this team is very well-rounded and should be able to adapt pretty easily to most game orders.
Orange is up next with In the Littlewood, Eret, Quig, and Finster. This team has a huge bias towards movement games, with Sands of Time narrowly managing to beat To Get to the Other Side out as their best game.
However, Sands of Time is benched for this event, so To Get to the Other Side is closely followed by Ace Race, in which both Martin and Quig dominate, and Meltdown, which all the team members performed fairly well in last event.
This team's worst three games are Sky Battle, Survival Games, and Rocket Spleef Rush, and with all three in rotation for the event, the Ocelot should try and get them played as early as possible.
The Yellow Yaks are up next, and with the Goggy Sapnap duo paired with Gumi and Elena, this team's best game is by far Survival Games, with Sapnap's insane stats being backed up with solid performances from the rest of the team as well.
Their second best game, Battle Box, isn't in rotation, and neither is their third best in Sands of Time, which could leave this team with less strong options than their competitors. With Sapnap not having a great time last event in Meltdown, it's by far their worst game stat-wise, although this is likely a pretty misleading statistic given how cracked Sapnap is. Buildmart and Ace Race are other games they should avoid, with lower scores in both of those games, but on the whole, this team is extremely well-rounded with just one or two weak spots.
Illumina, Solidarity Gaming, and the convex duo of Cub Fan and Good Times of Scar are MCC's 23's Lime Llamas. This team excels in games that prioritize communication and teamwork, with the unfortunately benched Sands of Time being their best game.
Their next best game is, unsurprisingly, Buildmart, and this is followed by Grid Runners and Survival Games. This team's weaker games are Parkour Tag and Meltdown, with To Get the Other Side only narrowly beating out Meltdown thanks to a standout performance from Illumina.
Next we have the Green Geckos with Dream, Connor, Tina, and Foolish. This team is largely carried in terms of stats by Dream and Foolish, and so the team's best and worst games largely representative of their individual skills.
As such, team-based games have been slightly misrepresented here, but either way, the Geckos' best games are Parkour Tag, Sky Battle, Survival Games, with Sands of Time being in third, but, being benched.
On the other hand, Green's worst game is actually To Get to the Other Side, despite Dream's great performance in it. It's followed by the benched Battle Box and Hole in the Wall, meaning two of this team's greatest weaknesses have been completely eliminated before the event has even started.
Their next weakest game is Meltdown, and even this is subject to change thanks to the game only having been played once. And so, although most people are expecting this team to perform poorly, they're set up to defy expectations.
Next up, we have the Girls and the Gays, or the Cyan Coyotes, with Scott's Major, JoJo Solos, False Symmetry, and Pearlescent Moon.
This team crushes in Buildmart with an insane 2.25 predicted placement, and this is followed by a much more normal but still strong Rocket Spleef Rush thanks to JoJo's insane performance.
Their next two strongest games, however, are Hole in the Wall and Battle Box, both of which are benched. And as such, Cyan's strongest games are very valuable to them, and game order matters to this team's performance a lot.
Their weakest game is Grid Runners, and this is followed by Parkour Tag and To Get to the Other Side. And with all these games in rotation, it's important that the Coyotes get these games out of the way quick.
This team also has the highest standard deviation between their best games and worst games in the entire event, though again, game order is going to be very, very important. Bad Boy Halo, Sylvie, Puns, and Sniffrish are up next, and as MCC 23's Aqua, their strongest games are actually Survival Games and Meltdown, with Sniff putting up amazing numbers in both of these games.
They should try to avoid Rocket Spleef Rush and To Get to the Other Side, and were actually another one of those lucky teams with 2 out of 3 of their worst games being benched.
The captain's back for MCC 23 and on the blue bats with Kara Corvus, SB737, and Sneak Snag. This team is heavily movement oriented, as you can probably see from the graph. Both Sneak and SB are extremely good at Parkour Tag, which makes it their best game, but it's closely followed by Buildmart.
Although Sneak isn't quite as good at Buildmart, SB has a nigh on perfect rating at Buildmart, and that skyrockets it to the Bats' second best game.
The games the Bats are worst at are Survival Games, Rocket Spleef Rush, and To Get to the Other Side. An interesting stat to note here, though, is that although Meltdown is a decidedly mid game for the Bats, It's only placed so highly there because of the captain going crazy in Meltdown last MCC, which makes this game a big question mark in reality and one to definitely keep an eye on if you're a fan of the bats.
Next up, we have the Purple Pandas with Pizza Hut, Phil, G Nelly, and Smallish Beans. This team's best games are movement and team-oriented, with Rocket Spleef Rush and Build Mart being their best games.
Pete in particular goes crazy in Rocket Spleef Rush, and the Build Mart is basically carried to their best game by G's near perfect score in the game. Unfortunately, their third best game, Hole in the Wall, isn't in rotation, but it's followed by survival games in which they perform well thanks to strong scores across the board.
Games the Pandas should get out of the way early are Sky Battle, Grid Runners, and To Get to the Other Side, with this team having one of the highest differences between their best and worst games, making game order extremely important for them as well. Finally, then, we have the Pink Parrots, with Wilbursut, Rambu, Amesy, and Blushy. This team had the misfortune of Battlebox, a benched game being their best, thanks to great performances from Blushy and Rambu.
Thankfully, their next best games are all in rotation, with Build Mart, To Get to the Other Side, and Ace Race. It's a similar story with their worst games, however, with Meltdown and Rocket Spleef Rush being their bottom two, and their third worst, Sands of Time, being benched.
And those are the keys to victory for every MCC 23 team. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, consider subscribing.